When we solve an equation for x, we're trying to find the solution. And we solve quadratics. When we solve quadratics, there will always be two solutions. Solutions are also known as our answer. All right, so we're crossing the x-axis here at two places. That tells me I have two real solutions. Solutions mean where I cross the x-axis. Okay? Am I even crossing the x-axis in our second example? No. So that would be two imaginary, which we now know what that is, solutions. You can abbreviate if you need to. My third picture, it looks like I'm only touching the x-axis one time, but we know that, you know how last time I told you that it is, whatever your highest exponent is, that's how many answers you have. These will always be x squared, so we always have two answers. It looks like it's just one, but it's really two, and that's called a double root. Okay, so you may hear a few different words during this unit, and we call solutions, or we say zeros. You guys have seen that before. Or we say roots. We also say x-intercepts. All of those words mean this is my answer. Jordan, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, so it says first, let's remember how to simplify square roots. If you guys had me in geometry, that you would know how to do this. I don't think I had any of you. No, I did not. So let's remember, or let's learn, or your teacher may have taught you, I don't know, how to simplify square roots. If you put in your calculator the square root of negative 52, what do you get? Open your calculator.
7.2 decimal.
Okay, so we get a decimal. That's not what we want. Okay, we want to simplify this.
Wait, I get 7.2 something I.
Right, that's because your calculator is already set in A plus BI mode from the other day, which is fine. What that means is I need to do the factor ladder. Okay? You can either do a factor tree or the factor ladder. I think the ladder is kind of foolproof. I don't really mess up with it. So when I make my ladder, I'm asking myself, what is the smallest number that goes into 52? 2. We always want to use the smallest number to divide by. What's 52 divided by 2? 26. What's the smallest number that goes into 26? 2. Divide. 13. Smallest number to go into 13? Nope. Other than 1, the smallest number would be 13. Right, nothing else goes into it. Once I get to 1, I stop. That's the end of my factor ladder. Anybody miss that?
Oh, I'll just do the calculator.
Okay. Doing it on the calculator isn't bad, but once we start to circle up our pairs, may get confused. So, yep, I'm circling up my pair. At this point, I only need what's on the outside of my ladder. So my set of 2's come out to just be 2. We're not bringing them out as like 2 and 2. It's just one pair comes out to be that number. All right, so I'm done with that. Alright, my negative comes out to be what? How do I read this negative out? I don't want a negative under my radical. Think back to complex numbers.
Oh,
It comes out as I. And then I have whatever is left. Whatever does not have a pair stays under the radical. So 13. So our answer is 2I root 13. All good? Alright, now I have the square root of 196. What is the square root of 196?
14.
14. That is a perfect square. You could also do your factorial ladder for that if you wanted to, but you don't have to. Check in your calculator first, see if it's a perfect square. If you get a decimal, then you know you have to do it this way. Jordan, you with me?
Yeah.
Alright, so now I have number 3, the square root of negative 32. Well, I know this negative is going to come out to be what? That's going to come out to be an I. Alright? What's left over is the square root of 32. What's the smallest number that goes into 32? 2. Can I divide? What's 32 divided by 2?
Oh, 16.
16. I divide by the smallest number, which is 2. You get 8. Divide by the smallest number, 2. 4. Smallest number is 2. 2. 2. We get to 1 and we stop. If you don't use the smallest number and you divide by like 8 and 8, you will get to 1 quicker, but your answer would not be correct. It wouldn't be simplified. So always use the smallest number. I know you could use 8 and 4 for a lot of these, but use the smallest number. Which is why we did 196. That would be annoying because we would have to do 2 every time because they're all even numbers, but in this case, it helps you. So I circle my pairs. I have 2 groups of 2. So that comes out as, that 2 comes out times my other 2. That guy comes out.
That'd be 4.
Alright, what does not have a pair?
2.
2. That stays under my radical. So 2 times 2 times I gives me 4I root what? 2. That is how we simplify. I want you guys to do 4 through 6. Alright, so number 4. It's not a perfect square, right? So you had to do a factor ladder for 88. My smallest number was 2. I divided and got 44. Smallest number is 2. Divided and get 22. Smallest number is 2. 11. Smallest number is 11. We get to 1 and we stop. So I had, you guys had 1 pair?
Yeah.
Alright, that 1 pair comes out. Oh, we didn't talk about this. Yeah, you multiply what's left over.
22.
So 2 times 11, you should have 22, sorry.
Wait, then why wouldn't you just start with 22 and just put it with 22? That way it'd be easier.
That does not always work. And it's not going to work for the next one. Because we're always choosing the smallest number. So for 512, for number 5, the square root of 212, why am I losing it today?
216.
Give me a moment. Alright. Factor ladder for 216. Smallest number is 2. We get 108. We divide. Is that 54? And then we get 27. It's 3. Be careful there. And then we get 9. And 3. 3. 3. And then 1. So I have a pair of 2s, a pair of 3s.
Those 2 come out to 2 times 3.
Yep, so those come out as 2 times 3. What's left over under the radical? 2 times 3. So my answer is 6 root 6.
I don't know why I brought that in.
Yeah, only thing on the I and there's a negative. All Alright, for number 6, this is also not a perfect square, but I have a negative. That will definitely come out as I. So I have 26, smallest number is 2, 13, 13, 1. Do I have any pairs?
No.
No, so my answer stays I root 26. I don't have any pairs, so I can't bring any pairs out. All good?
Yep.
Good. Alright, let's focus for this part. This is the new stuff mixed with the old stuff. Alright, what we learned last class was that we are going to solve by factoring, which meant that we wanted everything to equal 0. So when I want everything to equal 0, I had x squared. I would move this 4 to the other side, so that positive 4 became what?
Negative.
Negative 4 that was equal to
Yeah.
0.
There's two numbers.
Okay? Because we were solving by factoring, once we got here, we noticed that this could be a dose problem. I could factor by dose here because I have 2 perfect squares. So that means that the square root of x squared was what?
X.
And the square root of 4? 2. What happens to my signs? One's positive, one's negative. Okay? Once we got here, we set everything equal to 0. So that meant we had, if I solve for x would equal negative 2. On the other side, x would equal positive 2. Okay? That's what we learned last class. What we're learning today is that we can solve by square root. Solving by square root, we are looking for a square. Okay, so x squared equals 4. A light bulb goes off. I know I can solve by square root because I have a square. This is how we do it. The opposite of square root is, the opposite of square is square root, right? So I'm going to take the square root of each side. Do this on your paper. Once that happens, my square and my square root cancel out. So what's left over? Just x on the left side, because my square and my square root cancel out. On the right side, I have the square root of 4. What's the square root of 4?
2.
2. But before we have the square root of 4, I'm going to put plus or minus. Because I could have negative 2 times negative 2 give me 4, and I could have positive 2 and positive 2 give me 4. I don't know which one, so we always use plus or minus, and then I'm going to write 2. Do we see how these are the same exact answers? X equals positive 2 and negative 2. Negative 2, positive 2. We just solve by square roots with a lot less steps. Okay, that's what we're doing today. So, these are important notes about solving by square root. You want to use this method when you can take square root of each side. But yeah. You can take the square root. All right, it should look like this. X squared is equal to 4. Or it could look like that, where you have x minus 1 squared is equal to 4. Okay, either one works. We're going to see both of them today. Step 2. Square root is the opposite of squaring answers. That means if we have 5 squared that equals 25, if we flipped it into the square root of 25, you'll get 5. They're just opposites of each other. When you square root, you should get two answers. A positive and a negative. We know that because whenever you have to write in the radical, you also need to write in plus or minus. This is so important, guys. Don't forget your plus or minus. Remember, for x squared, we need to have two answers. One's positive, one's negative. So far, so good?
Yep.
Alright, let's practice. I don't know why it starts off at number 2. I don't know, but I was thinking just go with it. The first problem, which is labeled example 2, we have 3x squared equals negative 27. I want this x squared by itself. If I want x squared by itself, what needs to go? How do I get rid of that 3? Divide both sides by 3. Once that happens, my 3's cancel out, and I have x squared is equal to what? It's negative 27 divided by 3. Negative 9. Alright, I have x squared by itself, but I want x by itself. How do I get rid of that square? No, you take the square root. We're going to take the square root of both sides. My square and my square root cancel each other out because they're opposites. And I have x equals, well, what's the square root of 9?
3. So
Let's not forget my plus or minus though, right? Whenever we draw our...
plus or minus I square root
No, answer my question. What's the square root of 9?
3.
3. How does this negative come out?
3.
Just
Oh,
that.
that is okay.
So we have x is equal to plus or minus 3. You don't have this on your paper, but your solution would be x is equal to plus or minus 3i. What type of solution would this be? 2 real, 2 imaginary, or double root?
Double root.
2 real, 2 imaginary, or double root? There's an I in our answer, right? So this would be the type that is 2 imaginary. Okay, there's an imaginary number.
I was looking for the root of the right there. Where would you put the I on the graph?
All right, look at number 3. I need x squared by itself. So what needs to go?
The 4.
The 4. How does it go? Divide both sides by 4. So that cancels out. So I have x squared is equal to 7. To get rid of my square, I need to take the square root. But essentially I want x by itself. My square root cancel out, so I'm left with x equals plus or minus
7.
square root of 7, because this does not reduce. If I go to the corner and try to reduce it, I don't have any pairs. So it just stays the square root of 7. So my solution would be, whatever your answer is, x equals plus or minus root 7. Type of solutions, 2 real, 2 imaginary, or double root?
2.
2 real. Do you guys know what double root is?
No.
Stop saying it then.
It's double root when you have 2.
The same number.
Same number.
So positive 7 or positive square root of 7 and negative square root of 7 aren't the same. Double root means we have like 3 and 3. Like the same exact number. Any questions on number 3? Like number 4 is fun. My kind of fun. Alright, I want x squared by itself. I need to get rid of that negative 1/3. Okay, it's being divided, so I'm going to multiply each side by the reciprocal.
We'll give him 1.
So it will be, it could be 3 over 1, but let's get rid of that negative 2. So negative 3 over 1, or you can just write negative 3. I'm multiplying each side by negative 3. When that happens, negative 3 times 40 gives me what?
Well, negative 3 times 40 gets you negative 120.
Negative 120 is equal to, well, this negative 3 and negative 1/3 cancel out. So what's left over on the right side? Just x squared. How do I get rid of that x squared?
Square root.
You take the square root of both sides. So the 2 and the square root cancel out, so I have x equals, because I had to draw my radical, we know it's going to be plus or minus something. It looks weird because it's flip-flopped. Okay. Okay. The square root of 120 is not a perfect square, so off to the side, let's do our factor ladder. Smallest number to go into 120 is 2. We get 60. Smallest number is 2. We get 30. Smallest number is 2. We get 15. What's the smallest number? 15.
5.
Everyone says 5, but it's not.
3.
It's 3. So then we get 5. 5, and then it's 1. So if I circle my pairs, I just have one pair of 2, right? So that pair of 2 just comes out. What happens to this negative that's under the radical? That becomes I. Jeffrey, what's left under the radical? 30. So Jeffrey got 30 because he multiplied 2 times 3 times 5. Everything on the outside that does not have a pair, you just multiply together. And so you get 30. This is our answer. So my solution is x equals plus or minus 2i root 30. What kind of solutions do I have? 2 real, 2 imaginary, or double root? Do I have an I in my answer? Whenever you have an I in your answer, it's going to be 2 imaginary. Yep, the I for imaginary. One of these will be double root, I promise. 2 of them, I think. Alright, number 6, because we skipped over 5 apparently. But that's the next number, right?
You want 5?
Is this what you have for the next one?
Yeah, that's 5.
Okay, yeah, it flip-flopped. I don't know what happened. Let's just ignore it. Alright, so here I have x squared by itself. To get rid of it, I need to move this positive 6 first. So I'm going to subtract 6 from each side. Once I subtract 6 from each side, that cancels out. I'm left with negative x squared divided by 8 is equal to negative 10. You lost? That 8 is still on the bottom. Alright, now I'm going to get rid of that 8, but I also want to get rid of that negative. Can I multiply both sides by negative 8? It's just going to cancel out. Because I still want x by itself. So we're just going to get rid of that negative and the 8. If you didn't get rid of the negative and just did like times 8, which is fine, but then you have to divide by negative 1 later. So let's just do it all at one time. So here my negative and my 8 cancels out, so I'm left with x squared is equal to positive 80. Alright, now I have x squared. How do I get x by itself? You take the square root of both sides. Yep, so x equals plus or minus. 80 is not a perfect square. So we can do the ladder. Smallest number to go into 80? 2, divide, get 40, get 2, 20, 10, 2, 5, 5, 1. So we're going to circle our pairs. So a pair of 2s, another pair of 2s. So what's 2 times 2? 4 root 5. You can check this by putting this in your calculator. If you put the square root of 80 in your calculator, you'll get a decimal. If you check it and put 4 square root of 5, you should have the same decimal. So that can tell you whether you're doing your factor lattice right. What type of solutions do I have here? 2 real. They're all real numbers. 2 real solutions.
Wait, how do you know when it has a 9?
When there's a negative. If there's a negative under the radical, then you bring the I out.
Oh,
Make a good time. Anybody have? 5. Alright, look at the one in the middle. I have x minus 3 squared equals to 64. So I'm going to take the square root of each side. There's nothing else attached to that parentheses and the square. Okay? I have all this by itself. So basically that's x squared. When that happens, my square and my square root cancel out just as before, and I'm left with x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus, what's the square root of 64? 8. You guys follow that?
Yeah.
It's a little different format, but you're still looking for whatever's attached to your square. Alright, how do I solve for x?
Plus.
We're going to add 3. When we do this, we put it before the plus or minus. That cancels out, so I have x is equal to 3 plus or minus 8. Nope. If one of those had an I, that would be it because you can't combine them. But in this case, I just have 2 numbers. So that's basically what's 3 minus 8 and what's 3 plus 8. What's 3 minus 8?
-5.
So we get 11 and -5. So my answer is x equals -5 and positive 11. I had all numbers there, so I had to keep going to simplify.
So there's 2 answers in there?
So my solution, well, we should always have 2 answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 2 real, 2 imaginary, double root. 2 real. They're just 2 normal numbers. So they would cross the x-axis somewhere. Alright, so let's look at number 7. I'm going to highlight, y'all can underline if you'd like, the important part. So whatever's attached to your square is important. That 2 is not inside the parentheses, not important. Plus 3, not important. So I need to move everything away from what's highlighted. Which one do I get rid of first, the 2 or the plus 3? Why the 2?
The plus 3.
First.
No. When we're moving stuff away from x, we do opposite pendus. So your adding and subtraction always goes first. So let's subtract 3. And I have 2 times x plus 5 squared is equal to 6. I still have x plus 5 squared. But I want to get rid of this 2. So I need to divide both sides by 2. And I'm left with X plus 5 squared is equal to 3. Do I have my parentheses and my squared by itself?
No.
On the left side, it's not by itself?
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So now I can take the square root of each side. My square and my square root disappear. So I'm left with x plus 5. What do I write before I simplify my square root? Plus or minus. Does 3 simplify?
No.
No, so it stays square root of 3. We're almost done. I just got to get x by itself. Minus 5, minus 5. So I have x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus root 3. I cannot combine those. We just leave it like that. And that would be 2 real solutions. Okay, any questions there?
No.
All right, we're almost there. All right, look at example 8. This is what I want by itself. You want your parentheses and your square by itself. Everything else has to go, right? So I'm going to add 50 first. And I'm left with 5 times x minus 1 squared is equal to 0. I still don't have all of that by itself. So divide by what? 5. So now I have it's equal to 0. Do I finally have my parentheses and my square by itself?
Yeah.
Yes, so now I can take the square root. So I take the square root of the left side and of the right side. On the left side, this cancels out, so I'm left with x minus 1 is equal to plus or minus 0. Now, if I want to solve for x, I add 1. I'm left with x equals 1 plus or minus 0. So, what's 1 minus 0? What's 1 minus nothing? 1. What's 1 plus nothing? All right, everyone. 2 real, 2 imaginary, or double root. Double root. Do we see why?
Yeah, 24.
It's the same number. So if we were to plot this, that's 1. We would have it will look like this. It will look like it's only in one spot, but we know that it's really 2. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, your exit ticket, you cannot leave until you do either 9 or 10. Actually, do 10.
Do 10 instead of 9.
Yeah. 9's going to confuse you. We'll do that one together. And Stinger. Actually, I'll do 9 of... yeah, no. All right, so we should add 3 to both sides.
22
You
again.
should have x plus 1 squared is equal to 25. And then we take the square root. So that leaves x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus 5. Then I'm going to subtract 1. And I have x equals negative 1 plus or minus 5. Not quite done. Your x is, so you have negative 1 minus 5, which gives you negative 6, and negative 1 plus 5, which gives you 4. That is your answer. While we have time, I'm going to go ahead and put the answer up for number 9. This would be 2 real, right?
Yeah.
2 regular numbers. Alright, for this one, I would add 5. If you have time, you can copy this down. 9 plus 5 is 14. What do I do with this negative out front? Divide by -1 to get rid of that. So I'm left with x plus 8 squared is equal to -14. I take the square root of both. My square root cancel out, so I have x plus 8 is equal to plus or minus. Let's see, 14 can reduce, right? Wait, no it can't. 14 just stays, but that I can come out. So when I subtract 8 from both sides, your answer is x equals -8 plus or minus I root 14. So this is how we solve by square roots. You will have a mini quiz next class. Please be accountable and please do it. If you don't understand a question on your homework, skip it. Don't skip all of them, but you can skip a couple if you don't understand. But you have to try. You have to try. If not, this test will smack you in the face next week. Your test is next Wednesday, I think. Next one. There's standard 5 and 6 tomorrow if you guys want to come.